Hello and welcome back to part 2 in my key mapping tutorial series. In the first part I showed you how to bind a keyboard input to an ability on your ability bar. We're now going to go through and create a little widget that we can allow us to change the binding on the fly. So here it is working with the one key currently, and we're going to make it so we can change that to whatever key we wish. So let's get started by creating the UI for this. To start off, we need to create the user interface widget blueprint, and we need to call this the key bindings window. And the key binding window, we're going to open this up and we're going to leave it as a canvas panel, and instead of there, we're going to put inside of there, we're going to put in a border, and this border we want to be center of the window here. So I'm going to change the anchor here to center screen, change the position to be 0, 0. The alignment of it, I'm going to put to 0.5 and 0.5 in the Y. The size, I'm going to change to 1200 and Y to 500 to get a window. And I'm going to change the color of it to black. Okay. Next, we need to put in our content here. So the content is going to comprise of a vertical box, first of all. So drag in my vertical box, like so. And I'm going to give this vertical box some padding around the edges of, say, 10. Inside this vertical box, I'm going to have 3 elements. I'm going to have the window title, the scroll box in the middle, and then a button bar at the bottom. So let's do a text field first of all. And we're going to change this text to display key bindings. And we'll center it in the space. Next, we're going to go and add in a scroll box. And the scroll box is going to contain all the key bindings that we currently have associated to our ability bar. So in the key bindings here, we're going to leave it like this and change it to fill. We're then finally going to take in a horizontal bar and put that into the vertical box. So it's at the bottom here. The horizontal bar will house a button, so let's add our button into it. And the button is going to have some text in it. Our text currently is white and says text block. I'm going to change it to say close, and I'm going to change it to be black in color. I'm also going to change its padding. So I'm going to add the padding here of, say, let's do 20 to get us a nice padding around the edge. Let's say 30. That's better. And I want this to be aligned to the right hand side of the screen. So if we change the button over here and we tell it to be to the right hand fill, it will now fill the available space on the right hand side here. Now we hit compile and we're saved there. Next, we need to make the entries that will go into this key binding window. So let's close this and make the entries. So I'm going to go and create a new widget blueprint and do key binding entry. In this one, we're going to have a horizontal box. But first, get rid of the canvas panel and search for horizontal box and plop that in. And inside here, we're going to have our text for what the thing is. So text. And next to that, we're going to have an input key selector. Now, this is a type of widget that when you click on it, will allow you to insert any old key you want. It'll read an input. So I can drag this down into my horizontal box, like so. I can also tell my input here to have some padding, so it separates it from my text block here. So I'm going to tell these both to fill the available space, but I'm going to tell my input key selector to have padding on the left hand side of by 100. So then when it fills the available space, it will look okay. And to see how it's going to look, I can change the fill screen here to custom and put in a value of 1200 in the width, and then just leave it as whatever I want here, so 50 in the height. And that's roughly what it's going to look like. So next we need to assign what these things are going to be. So the text block here is going to be the name of the ability slot itself. So I'm going to change the name of this to be key binding action text, and tick is variable because it's going to be changing in the game when we build it. And the input key selector, I'm going to change the name of that one to key binding input and make sure it's variable is ticked, which it should be, and then hit compile and save. Now I'm going to change my button opacity on my key input selector here so it doesn't look like a button, so it disguises it a little bit. So I'm going to change that from normal in the style section, change it to normal, there we go, and change it from box to none. There you go. The text I'm going to change, text style here, I can change that color to be white. Hit compile and save that. The next job is we need to assign what these our next job, we need to assign these to some variables. So let's go to the graph here. So the first variable we'll need is a binding text. So this would be action text. And that'd be a text value, and you'll make it editable by turning a little eyeball on. And the next one you want is the ability slot that's referring to. So we get ability slot, and we'll make it the type ability slot UI object reference. And again, turn a little eyeball on so you can see where it is. Okay, now on the pre-construct for this, we're going to take the key binding action text, get that, and set the text. And the text is being set to this action text. Drag that down, and there you go. Compile and save. The next one, we're going to take the ability slot out and choose get. And then from there, I can read what mapping it has. So get the mapping. And then from the mapping, I'm going to get the display name of the key. So key display name. I'm now going to assign it to the input action text's default text. So let me see that. Get key binding text. And from there, do set. And you'll come in and you'll find it. And it's called. I always forget what it's called. If you ever forget what it's called, just go to designer view. Click on the thing you want. Scroll down. And it's called no key selection, no key specified text, and key selection text. So we're going to change no key specified text. We want it to be. So this one is no key specified text, and plug that in there. So with the key binding input, this input action here, this actually has two events associated to it, as on key selected and is selecting key changed. You want the on key selected. This means that the player has chosen a new key. In that case, I want to get the ability slot out, choose get, and then from there, set mapping. Now the mapping for this is going to come from the selected key structure we have here. But this is an input chord structure. So drag this out and choose break input chord, and you can choose then the key to go into it. Hit compile and save. You're now done here. Close this and then go into your key bindings window. Now we need to add these dynamically on here based on our action bar. So go to the graph, and on the pre-construct, we're going to get player controller and cast to our player controller. From the player controller, I can access my heads up display because that's where I created it. So get heads up display. And then from there, I can get the action bar. If I just type in action bar, maybe. Ability bar. There we go. That's what I'm doing wrong. Get ability bar. And then from there, I can get ability grid. So now, as I mentioned in the first part, this refers to getting all the abilities we have on our screen. So from here, I can drag out and get children, get all children, and that'll give me an array of each ability I have. Do a for each loop, and plug that into your cast to finish that off. Now on the for each loop here, we need to make it create a new widget for us. So I'm going to drag this out and create widget, and we're going to choose our key binding entry widget. Now at the moment I need it to display information for me to pass through it. So I need to go back to my key binding entry, go to the graph, and go to my action text and ability slot. Both of these need to have expose on spawn ticked. Once compiled, go back to your window and refresh this node by right clicking, choose refresh node. Now you should see the action text arrive and the ability slot arrive here. So here we're building our key bindings for our ability system. So my ability here will be the ability slot, which I get from here but cast to ability slot, and plug that in, and that will go into ability slot there. The action text is going to be come out of here, format text, and we're going to type in ability slot and do curly bracket num curly bracket. When you hit enter, you get the format text showing a parameter in. I have a video all about format text and I can explain what is going on and how you do it. But essentially, whatever's inside of curly brackets becomes a parameter that you can pass through into this text field. And the parameter we're putting in is our array index in this case. So the first one will say ability slot 0, next one will be ability slot 1, and so on and so forth. So now we've created the key binding entry widget. We now need to add that to our scroll box. So in the design view, click on your scroll box, name this bindings scroll box, and tick is variable. In the graph, drag this out, choose get, and then add child to it. And you can plug in your return value into the add child so it knows what you're adding towards it. After hit compile and saving, you're pretty much done here. All that's left is to add our close button to remove it from the screen. So with the close button selected, scroll down, you'll see the on clicked event. And on the clicked event, we're just going to do remove from parent. And that'll remove it from the screen. Compile and save. So that's our window, but how do we actually get this window to show up? Well, what I did in my version is I went to my head-up display and I created a button on here and just dragged it onto the screen here. I'm going to put it in the bottom corner like so, anchor it to bottom corner, change the size of it to 148 and 148, and I'm going to put an image into it so I know what it is. I've got a cogwheel image to use. Okay. Hit compile and save that. On this button, I'm going to go down and choose the clicked event. And with the clicked event here, I'm going to take it to create widget. Choose the key binding window. And then add to viewport. Compile and save. So now let's test this out. Hit play. I can still run and roll, and if I hit the option window, I've now got my ability slots, and you can see the options I have available. I have slots through 0 to 7, and I can click on each one of these and change the key I want to use. So let's say I want to use now the 4 key for that one. Hit close, and now I can hit 4 instead of 1. 1 won't do it now. Now notice the ability slot didn't update its information here. That's quite an easy fix. We'll go into that. So if I go into my key binding entry, go to the graph, and where I update the key selected, I want to call the ability slot and get ability binding text. That's it. Get binding text, set text, and the set text is coming from our mapping here. type in name, and you'll get the key display name, like so. So now as you select it, it will not only update the mapping, but also update the name of that mapping on the button. So let's do that again. So if I go in there now, push the button here and change it to 6, for example, hit close. 6 is now updated down here on the button, and I hit 6 and it'll roll. And this button still works and does its job as you would expect. And that's it. So the key bindings there is quite simple. We use an input key selector to decide which key we want to bind, and we're manually setting it to it. Now, I experimented with different ways of messing about the input settings in the project settings here. You can change them, you can add to them, you can mess about with them, but this seemed like the most straightforward way of doing it with little overhead. However, in the future, I may work on a different version which uses and utilizes the input action event up in the project settings. However, this was a bit neater, a bit tidier, especially for an ability system such as this. If you've got special key mapping problems or issues that you're trying to figure out, let us know in the comments below, and I'll try and get back to you, or think about trying to make a video covering all these topics that people have had. Thanks again for watching. If you want to watch more of my content, head over to patreon.com/Ryan Ailey, where you can become a patron and vote for videos just like they voted for on this one. Thanks again for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you all next time. Bye everyone.